It is Sipping with Sue time. I am Szu-Moy, and if you're joining us for the first time, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube, chatting with real people doing real things extraordinarily. And cheers, Nan. How are you?
I'm fine. It's almost Halloween.
I know.
My
What are you
favorite
drink?
holiday.
I know. What are you drinking?
So I'm drinking blackberry mead.
Mm. Okay, so I've never had blackberry mead. I'm drinking a Pinot Noir. I've had regular mead. I guess the white wine based mead. So how is
Honey, just
blackberry?
plain old honey mead. Yeah, that's
That's
the
what it
normal.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So how's
yeah.
blackberry?
Oh, it's good. It's good.
It's good.
And they got different flavors. They got different flavors. I also have some black cherry downstairs. It's awesome.
Ooh, nice. I love it. Well, you guys, cheers to the weekend. We are chatting with Nanette Patton, Nan, we like to call her, all about her fun and exciting hobby just in time for Halloween, which is ghost hunting. So, welcome.
Thank you.
So, just to get folks acquainted with you, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So sure, I'm Nanette, man. Um, I'm a Navy brat. I'm a mom. My daughter is a lawyer up in Colorado. I'm a retired Army officer. And now that I have left the military, I went to the dark side to do government contracting. So that's what I do. And I'm a lion. So that's the other thing that's big in my life.
Awesome, awesome. So tell us a little bit about ghost hunting. What does that entail? Tell us. I want to hear the whole gist of it. I've heard it before, but it's been a long time, and our folks haven't heard about it. And I know this is just such an uber interesting and like almost exotic topic because you don't run into people every day that do what you do. So tell us a little bit about ghost hunting and what it entails.
So that's a little bit surprising because about a decade ago, ghost hunting, there were so many ghost hunting shows on TV. It seemed like everybody was doing ghost hunting. Um, so what does ghost hunting entail? It's well for me, it's not like Scooby Doo where you're trying to solve a mystery and all that kind of fun stuff.
Mhm.
But if you've ever watched Ghost Hunters, I think that is the most similar to the type of work that I do when it comes to paranormal investigations. And I generally don't say ghost hunting, I say paranormal investigations. I've been into the noetic sciences ever
Mhm.
since I was a little kid. I didn't know there was such a word as noetic sciences, which let me explain what noetic science is, what that actually is, because that's not a term a lot of people are familiar with, but that is the focus of bringing a scientific lens to the ways that consciousness may influence the physical world. So topics include psychic abilities, psychokinesis, and survival of consciousness after bodily death. So that is what I am exploring. I have this great curiosity about what happens to our soul or consciousness when we pass away. You know, Einstein says energy is neither created nor destroyed. And from my perspective, consciousness and the soul is energy. So
Mhm.
where does it go? It can't be destroyed. So where does it go when we physically die?
Mhm.
And Tesla, one of his famous quotes is, to find the secrets of the universe, you must track energy, frequency, and vibration. So, one of the things that we use when we're ghost hunting are the tools that we use in order to tune into vibration and energy. Because
Mhm.
things that we use thermometers. So, cold spots are associated with spiritual paranormal activity, but not just cold spots. Sometimes you will experience hot spots. And I've experienced hot spots only twice in the 20 years that I've been doing investigations.
Mhm.
Um, Cold spots are far more common, but it is possible to go the other way. We use EMF detectors. So, electrical current, that's what EMF is. It's all about electrical current. We use digital recorders in order to capture the idea of electronic voice phenomenon, more commonly known as EVPs.
Mhm.
We use infrared cameras in order to tune into visual frequencies that you don't
Mhm.
see with the naked eye. So it's all about, from my perspective, extrasensory perception is not really extra. It's not a sixth sense.
Okay.
If you think about it, a dog can hear frequencies that we cannot, right?
Mhm.
So for me, ESP is simply people who have broader aperture than the average person. So
Mhm.
they are able to perceive more in our environment than your average Joe. But it's not really an extra sense, it's
Mhm.
just a wider aperture.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I have a question that just came in from Jane, cousin Jane. Are these souls stuck in our world? Is her question.
So that's an interesting topic.
Mhm.
Um, So one of my favorite books. So I've been interested in the paranormal ever since I was a little kid. It all started. In fact, I still have the books. So back when my dad was at the Naval Postgraduate School,
Uh-huh.
he bought me these two books. When I was in the fourth grade, he bought me these two books, and I read these books, and then I started reading all kinds of books about ghost stories from different locations, and that then in my 20s, I started exploring all things spiritual.
Okay.
So that is different religions like
Mhm.
Buddhism and Hinduism, which believe in reincarnation, unlike Christianity. But even within Christianity, you can find space for the possibility of ghosts because they use terms like purgatory, use
Mhm.
terms like limbo.
Mhm.
So there is space even in Christianity for the idea of ghostly or paranormal activity. Um, so our souls stuck. One of the books that I've read, which is about reincarnation, is The Journey of Souls.
Mhm.
And what happens is they do regression therapy, where they're using hypnosis in order to take people to previous lives. And the people who do this regression therapy with people have discovered not only can they gather information about past lives, they can gather information about what happens in between lives.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Because I've heard of regression, but
To
not to
read
that
all those books.
extent. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to go back to the question about our soul stuck.
Uh-huh.
So if you think about consciousness and God or the source or the universe, whatever term that you use for the higher power, that's infinite. It never ends. It's infinity. It's infinity. So a human life that lasts about 76 years to 78 years is insignificant when you're dealing with a continuum of infinity,
Mhm.
right? So what happens, according to the books, some of the books that I've read, is they're not necessarily stuck. What happens is when they pass away, particularly in a shocking way. So if they're murdered,
Mhm.
or they're accidentally killed, some freak accident, or they commit suicide, some kind of traumatic ending to their life. Sometimes they're a little bit slower in going back to into the light, so to speak.
Mhm.
When you talk about near death experiences, people talk about going into the light.
Mhm.
So some people take a little more time um, before they go into the light. And they can say it on average, it takes 3 days on average from the time they die to 3 days before they actually go into the light.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes people will stay beyond 3 days. And I guess that's what you're being called
Mhm.
being stuck. And sometimes when you have in a paranormal group, you will have psychic mediums, and part of their job is to help them get to the light and redirecting them to the light, so they can move on. But sometimes they just want to stop and they want to process what has occurred. But when you're talking about infinity, their idea of pausing for 80 years or 100 years or whatever, and when you're talking about infinity, that's just, like that. It really, it's insignificant.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you. Another question that came in is, have you ever been touched? And I'm
But
sure.
have I ever, so I don't, I mean, touched by a spirit?
I believe so. I think that's what she's asking. That's what Stacy's
So,
asking.
so yes, and
Mhm,
people, it's not super common, but it does happen.
mhm,
I've had people in my paranormal group actually get scratched by ghosts or
mhm,
the unliving.
mhm,
Um, as for me, I have, so this is what actually at the Gunter Hotel here in San Antonio. We were doing an investigation in the Gunter Hotel. For those of you who do not know the history of the Gunter Hotel, way back in the mid 1960s, there was someone, and they have in the little museum in the basement of the hotel. They have the key to the original rooms,
mhm,
636. Um, it's that room no longer exists. They divided it into two different rooms, so
mhm,
it doesn't look the same way that it did in the 1960s. But
mhm,
anyway, this guy was in this room. He had gotten out of the Air Force. He was suspected to be a closeted gay guy, or possibly even transgender. Seemed to me probably more transgender than gay. But
mhm,
back in the 1960s, that wasn't something you talked about. You didn't get a lot of emotional support for it. It was a very challenging life when you found yourself in a way
mhm,
where your sexual identity, your sexual orientation didn't match the gray and white, the black and
mhm,
white of male and female, and heterosexual. But anyway, he was seen having someone that looked like a woman going in and out of his room.
mhm,
Um, but at some point, someone got killed.
mhm,
There was blood in the room. He ended up going. He ended up going to the St. Anthony's. The police were coming after him. He ran away to the St. Anthony's hotel, and in the St. Anthony's hotel, he shot himself in the head and killed himself. But in that particular, so there were two different. There are now two different rooms. So my paranormal group, San Antonio Paranormal Investigations, is we would often rent out those rooms in order to conduct investigations, and we were in one of the rooms. And I'm not clairvoyant, which means I don't see ghosts. I'm not clairaudient. I don't hear the ghosts. I'm clairsentient. So I sense or feel their presence.
mhm,
Um, People who are psychic mediums that I've worked with in the various paranormal groups that I've belonged to over the last 20 years, moving with my Army career. Um, Time and time again, psychic mediums would say that there's something about me that ghosts are attracted to. I'm like a magnet for ghosts. They like to hang around me for some reason. So, but anyway, we were doing an EVP session. We were doing an EVP session, and I was talking to the spirit that was clearly present because, I felt it, other people felt it. And I said, I give you permission to use my body to help me understand what you experienced. So what unfolded after I gave permission to the spirit to use my physicality to explain, what I proceeded to feel was someone grabbing my arm right there. And you know how you have the tendons right here on your arm? I could feel someone's thumb in between my
mhm,
tendons. I could feel them grabbing my arm. And then I felt in the back of my neck like someone was poking me with something
mhm,
sharp, like
mm,
a knife
okay.
or an ice
Mhm,
pick or something like that. Someone
mhm.
was right in between my shoulder blades. Someone was stabbing me. So yeah, that is the most pronounced experience of having a ghost touch me.
That's extremely pronounced. Oh my goodness. So was that something when you collected all of the information from that particular, um, you know, like site visit that you did? Um, how did you guys come together with like what you found out afterwards? Like with all of that
Well,
information, with like feeling the pressure of the knife and that kind of. Um,
so, we have SOPs. We have SOPs for those of you who are in the military, know what SOPs are. Even in paranormal groups, you got
Mhm.
SOPs of how you conduct paranormal investigations.
Mhm.
In our particular group, San Antonio Paranormal Investigations, which is now defunct, it's been defunct since right before the pandemic because our founder and leader, Guillermo Fuentes, actually moved up to Colorado.
Mhm.
So after he moved to Colorado, everybody scattered and went to other groups. Um, I have not actually found another group that I'm in yet, but let me go back to the story. Um, what was the question again? I forgot. Lost my train of
Was
thought.
like so all of the data and basically
So
so
the
your
data.
experience,
Okay.
yes.
So
Mhm.
SOPs for how we conduct paranormal investigations.
Mhm.
So there is a preparatory period. So one of the roles, there are multiple roles within a paranormal group. The role
Mhm.
that I usually played, one I already told you, one I'm a clairsentient. I'm a sensitive is the other word that is commonly used for that role. A sensitive, not a full
Mhm.
blown psychic medium. Um, not That's not what I do.
Mhm.
So clairsentient, just as sensitive, but I was also the historian. So part of going into an investigation is actually going into the city records and Googling, trying to understand the history of
Mhm.
the actual location that you're investigating, trying to find out all you can. And some of that happens afterwards, as well as before. So finding out the history and trying to tune into the actual level of history of
Mhm.
where the paranormal activity could be coming from. Because one technique that you can use for investigations, if um, one of the things that you can do, if you know when the traumatic death occurred, because usually the places that we investigated, there have been traumatic deaths of some sort. If you know the time period that you're working with, you can actually dress up in that time period. So you're trying to reset the mood to make the
Mhm.
ghost feel more comfortable, that things are more familiar to where they'll be more communicative. So you conduct the investigation. When you're conducting the investigation, it's just like in the shows. You got your infrared cameras are going, and they're just recording everything that's happening. You also have your digital recorders. Whenever you do an EVP session, you're recording things in your EVP session. You're recording all of that. You're taking photographs. So after that is all over, if you're a member of a group, most of them have an after action report that you got to write as an individual. What were your
Mhm.
experiences? I have a notebook that I have with me during the investigation. I'm taking notes as things occur, and I use that to build my after action report. Um, but then you have to sift through all of your digital data. So someone has to sit through and actually watch all the video recordings to see if we caught anything.
Mhm.
Someone has to go through all the digital recordings to see if we actually picked up any voice phenomenon on the digital recording. So that's the most time consuming part of investigation, and it's also the least glamorous. It's much more exciting. And then, the thing is, like when you watch Ghost Hunters, they cram a whole night into an hour, and you're
Mhm.
seeing the exciting parts. The vast majority of an investigation, nothing's really going on, and you will have these intermittent periods of activity because when a ghost tries to manifest itself, it consumes a lot of energy. It's taking the energy from the environment. That's why you have a cold spot, because it's taking the energy and it's leaving a vacuum.
Mhm.
Or it drains your batteries on your equipment whenever it does things like that. Or if it lights up the lights on a K2 device. um, it takes energy to do that. So they can't sustain that on a long-term basis. It'll happen for a few minutes, and then you may not experience anything for a couple hours,
Mhm.
and it's pretty boring. Um, but when it does happen, it's pretty exciting. And I guess that's the intermittent reinforcement that keeps you coming back.
Yeah. So do you do these during or when you were doing it with your group? Was it primarily at nighttime or did you do some daytime investigating?
So primarily we did them at night. Primarily we
Okay.
did them at night because especially if we're investigating businesses, people are there during the
Mhm.
day, so on and so forth. So
And
you
the
want to
last
be
thing
there
they
when
want
there
is
aren't a
you
lot of
there.
people. So you don't want to be there when there's lots of people. So usually
Yeah.
they are at night, but ghost activity happens in the day just as much as it does
Mhm.
at night. It's just that there is so much going on that it's a lot harder to perceive it or tune into it because you have all this other distraction going on. That's the
Mhm.
other reason why it's better to do it at night because it's quiet. It's quiet. It's
Mhm.
easier to tune in.
Gotcha, gotcha. So Jane is asking if it scares you. I'm gonna say probably no, right?
Oh, it doesn't scare me.
If you're doing it, you're like, no.
And the
Because
thing
I
is,
think,
just like in the military, when you're on a paranormal investigation and you break up and start exploring different parts of the house, you're not supposed to do it alone. You're supposed to have a battle buddy. So
yeah, yeah,
you stay in pairs to look out for each other.
yeah. Because the last thing you want is that, right? By yourself, and then what happens? Who knows? Who knows? So you do use a lot of tools. Are they pretty expensive to acquire? A lot of the different tools that you're using to conduct an investigation.
Um, I mean, you can use a tool as simple as dowsing rods. You can make those with a hanger. I have a set of dowsing rods that I made with a hanger. And I use them on paranormal investigations. So it can be that cheap as going
Mhm.
to your dry cleaner and reusing your hanger from the dry cleaners.
Okay.
Or, it can be more expensive where you're getting infrared cameras that pick up ultraviolet, infrared. I mean, those cameras are expensive. They are expensive. The recorders are expensive.
Mhm.
Um, some of the devices that you can buy, like your K2 devices, they're usually around, $70 to $100, that kind of thing, that kind of range. And then
Mhm.
more advanced equipment for temperature or for heat. Um, they're like $300, $400, like FLIR devices. They're,
Mhm.
you know, $300, $400.
Yeah. Oh, it's still a little expensive. A
I
little bit.
mean, it's not in, I mean, people who go golfing all the time, I think it's less expensive than golfing.
Correct, correct. Golfing is super expensive. Holy cow. So Stacy's asking, during your investigative experiences and stuff, have you ever had a spirit or an unliving follow you home?
So that is something that paranormal investigators have to think about.
Mhm.
And there is such thing as something called paranormal hangover. So when you go on into an investigation, um, you feel weird afterwards. You feel weird afterwards.
Mhm.
So for me, energy, there are certain things that I do to protect my ethereal field to where spirits cannot latch on to me and take me home. I have always been very careful to do that.
Mhm.
Some investigators have not. In fact, about 8 years ago, I several of us in our group were concerned about one particular individual in our group was not taking those precautions, and
Mhm.
we really felt that he was almost like possessed.
Hmm.
His
So what
behavior started changing a
Mhm.
lot. He was not himself. And I kept, there are things that you got to do. There are rituals that I do. I actually call on the archangels in order to
Mhm.
protect my aura and my ethereal.
Okay. 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 So what else would you do to protect yourself as you're going through the investigation or when you're, after you're done and you're finished?
So crystals are things that people
Mhm.
will wear. So crosses are things that people will wear. Using holy water or sage is another
Mhm.
method. I particularly like energy vortex necklaces,
Okay.
which is a common. It has crystals in it.
Mhm.
It has crystals in it, but because of the way it's constructed and designed, it creates a special energy vortex that helps keep negative energy out. So
Mhm.
it's basically a crystal on steroids.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, okay. Shannon's got a question. Have you only encountered um, the paranormal in other places, or have you also sensed them in your own home?
So I can't say that I've ever sensed them in my personal home. Well,
Mhm.
no, okay, that's not necessarily true. So my grandfather passed away in 2014,
Mhm.
and on a regular basis, my grandfather will come visit me.
Okay.
He will come visit me, and I know it's my grandfather because it'll be 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm in bed. I live alone.
Mhm.
One, I do not bake cookies, but I will wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and smell oatmeal
Cookies.
cookies baking. I know that's my grandfather because he used to bake me cookies. He used to bake me
Okay.
cookies. So I know it's
Mhm.
my grandfather. Another time he came and visited me, I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs. I do not cook bacon. I'm not a bacon person. I know it was
Mhm.
grandpa. I know it was
Yeah.
grandpa because he would cook the trout, he would cook the eggs, everything in the bacon grease. That's why his chicken fried gravy steak always tasted so great because it was cooked in that bacon gravy. So I just know that was him. I just know that was him. But where have but while I've never had like somewhat a ghost that I don't know who exactly it is. When I stayed at my grandfather's house was up in Sheridan, Wyoming, and that house was haunted. My first experience with the ghost in his house was at the age of 14. When
Wow.
when I had the experience, I didn't tell anyone about it. Then back when I was in my 20s, we were visiting my grandfather. We were all sitting around the kitchen table, and my dad proceeded to tell a story about the ghost in the exact same bedroom where I had my experience. And I'm like, wait a
Mm.
minute. And dad had never told us girls that the house was haunted. He
Mhm.
knew, he knew, but he never told us about it. Um, but he proceeded to tell the story about his experience with the ghost in the bedroom right off the kitchen, which is the room that's haunted. Um, and then I proceeded to tell my story about what happened. Then the thing that's really cool about it, I was 14 years old when I had the situation. Then back in 2001, I took my daughter, who was just shy of her 10th birthday at that time, or her ninth birthday. Let's see, 2001. Yeah, she was just shy of her ninth birthday. We went out. I was stationed at Fort Knox in Kentucky. This was right before 911. We went out to Wyoming and we stayed in the room off the kitchen. And we were both sharing the double bed. And we woke up in the middle of the night with the door opening and closing by itself, opening and closing. And it would almost go into the latch in the door just as it was about to go in. Then it would just open up and then it would go back, open up, go
Mhm.
back. And my daughter, she's shaking me. It's like, Mom, Mom, what the heck? Look at the door. And I'm watching it. I'm like, I'm not, it's just a ghost. And so the door is at the foot of the bed. So the door is opening and closing, opening and closing. And so I just did the same thing that I did when I was 14 years old. I reached up to close the door and the door slammed shut by itself. So that's what the ghost in that house was. He was a poltergeist. These are poltergeists.
Mhm.
He just liked to mess with people. So one of
Mhm.
the things that he really liked to do was breathe. So that was my dad's experience with the ghost. He would be in the bed and he would be awoken by someone doing heavy breathing. My dad
Mhm.
would get up, look in the kitchen. There's no one in the kitchen. He
Mhm.
would look outside the door, outside the windows, because there are two windows. Look outside. There's no one outside. Here's this heavy breathing. He'd get back in bed. The breathing would start up again. Then he'd get up and look again, and it would stop. But back and forth, back and forth. And then
Mhm.
my dad said, he got tired of it because he wanted to go to sleep, and he said, "Stop," and then it stopped.
Mhm. Yeah.
The ghost stopped.
Okay, so we have a couple of more Man, people are really interested. Well, this is an interesting topic. So, okay, so Stacy wants to know, what is the most haunted location you have investigated?
Oh, there are too many to name, actually. Too
No,
many to
the most.
name. Oh God, that one's hard. That one's really hard because I have done investigations at Eastern State Penitentiary, Moundsville Penitentiary, the Lizzie Borden House, Fort Delaware, Wayside Inn, Wellington train crash, Gettysburg Battlefield, Point Lookout Lighthouse,
Mhm.
Ferry Plantation, the Jefferson Hotel, which is in Eastern Texas. I mean, I've done places all over. Um, Although I'm gonna go with Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia.
Okay.
That place was wicked. And those of you who watch on Netflix with what's his Kirk? Who's the actor who plays Kirk in Star Trek? He has, is it Unsolved Mysteries? Whatever the name of that thing is, they just rebooted an old TV series on Netflix, and it has William Shatner as the host. The very, very first episode, they have the Shawnee Amusement Park in that episode. And I did an investigation when I was part of the Mid Atlantic Paranormal Investigations. We did an investigation at Shawnee Amusement Park. That place is pretty wicked haunted too.
Wow. So I think it's called The Unexplained.
That's it. That's it.
The Unexplained. My son is asking, or he's stating, he's like, "Hey, mom, remember seeing my doppelganger in Ornhofen?" No, because he knows, as everybody else does, that yeah, that's not me. That's all you, man. That's not me. I don't want to see him. I don't want to feel him. I don't want to hear him. I'm like, you can stay in your corner, and I'm gonna go about my business. So, but my son loves this stuff. He's said that he's seen things all over the place, and um, and my girlfriend Shannon is saying back off. So there you go. But yeah, it's super interesting. Very wow. This is like yeah. A lot of stuff going through the feed for sure, for sure. But I do appreciate you chatting with us today. I love this topic. I think we could probably talk about it for like a couple of hours just because it's so interesting. But I know we've got a limited time and you've got your Friday to get to and whatnot. But I appreciate you being on. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add
Sure.
on
So
paranormal investigations?
since this is a popular topic, I guess,
Yeah.
if you Google a haunting in South Texas, KSAT 12,
Mhm.
that was a series that KSAT 12 ran the month of October every year for 5 years, from 2015 to 2019. So 5 years. I am the only paranormal investigator that is in all 5 years of that special series that
Mhm.
KSAT 12 did. But if you Google KSAT 12, A Haunting in South Texas, you will see some of the videos of some of our investigations that we
Mhm.
did here in the San Antonio area, going to some of the most haunted spots here in Central Texas. So,
Gotcha. I'm
yeah.
gonna take that. I'm gonna Google it. I'll take that link, and then after we're done here, I'll make sure that I put the link onto the feed and whatnot. If you have any photos or any like fun things that you wanted to add to, probably the books that you were showing us, anything like that that you want to add to the feed, also that would be really cool.
All right,
Um,
cool.
my son said Wellington train crash is in Washington.
Yes, it is.
That's something.
Yes, it
Okay, is that
is.
something you've investigated or looked into also?
Yeah. So when I
Okay.
was back in 2009, when I was stationed at Fort Lewis, at that time, I belonged to the Dark Journey, the Tacoma chapter. And we
Mhm.
went up to the Wellington crash site up in the Cascade Mountains, where a train got hit by an avalanche and went crashing down the mountainside when the avalanche hit it. And everybody got killed. Most of the people got killed, and that place, and they have a park there now. They turned it
Mhm.
into a park to remember what happened. That place is Oh my God, you definitely feel the energy there of the trauma, the
Yeah.
shock, the trauma of what happened when that avalanche took away everybody's lives. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so my son is saying, yeah, it's definitely so it's a park, and he's like, it's a hike I want to do, and part of he likes to do abandoned places. He likes to explore
Oh,
abandoned.
abandoned places is cool
So
too. That is lots of fun.
yeah.
That's
So
lots of
yeah, so
fun.
Chance, you just have to get all of your what did you call it again when you're using the hangers? What did you call it?
Dowsing rods.
The dowsing rods. Put your hangers together, babe. Google it. Put dowsing rods together and go exploring. See what you come up with. But again, I appreciate you, Nan, for taking some time out to chat with us. As I like to do with all of my guests, we like to do a just for fun speed round. So you ready to go?
I guess. All right.
All
All
right.
right. Let's
So
go.
the creepiest place you've been into that creeped you out, even.
Definitely the Lizzie Borden house. That
Ooh.
place has some really crazy negative vibes. I think Lizzie Borden was sexually abused.
Ah, okay. Oof. All right. So what's your favorite? Tricks or treats?
Tricks.
All right. And favorite time of the year?
Halloween.
Of course. I gotta get to my doorbell here in a minute. Okay, so most humorous hunt you've been on.
Most humorous hunt. Huh.
Yes, like where it was like they were silly instead of being
All right. So
you know?
that's okay. So to me, silly retarded. So when I was at Rand in LA, I belonged to the Orange County Paranormal Reality, and they had this liking for doing investigations in cemeteries, and I'm like, really? I
Mhm,
mean, can't we go to something a little more interesting? I mean, that is just so lame to do an investigation in a cemetery.
mhm.
Because generally, ghosts want to linger where the trauma occurred,
Not
not where they
really
put the blame.
right.
Come on, it's lame.
Oh my goodness. Ah, well, again, thank you so much. I hope we're going to see you soon. Shannon's saying you need to come have drinks so we can go ahead and have a good time. Okay, so this is the last one, I promise, because we're supposed to be closing up here. Okay, Stacy wants to. Golly, I'm telling you, we'll be here for like an hour. Have you ever investigated Salem?
No, no.
Okay. Okay.
That is definitely a place I want to go. Yeah, that would be cool. No,
Yeah.
Falls River is the closest I've gotten to Salem. I have not actually been to Salem, Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay, you guys, we definitely have to go. We're running out of time. Thank you so much, Nan, for chatting with me, and just this has been, of course, it's such an interesting subject. It's so much fun. I know when you've been here, people are always like, let me talk to you and just get a lot of information. We'll put the link in after we're done. And again, you guys, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please head on over to Szu-Moy Tovez, hit subscribe and hit the bell to get all the latest content as soon as it is uploaded. And we will see you all next week. So take care.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.